Okay, so I showed you how to pull up the code. It's a P0113. So I'm going to show you kind of how to follow a trouble chart and figure out how to diagnose the code. So I'm going to show you the Moto Logic screen now. Okay, so we have a couple options. I'm going to click on the first one, and I just typed in P0113 and I clicked Diagnostics and DTC. Sorry if this is shaky. So this one, it shows a diagram. Here's our intake air temp sensor. This is sensor ground. This is that little symbol means it's a reference voltage. So it's sending out 5 volts. There's a resistor here, there's a resistor here. And then the PCM, I believe, is looking right here, or probably right here at the voltage to see if it has the right voltage. So it's saying that when the temperature is low, the voltage should be high. When the temperature gets high, the voltage should be low. And then it has a description here that I'm not going to read to you right now. It's a continuous monitor. Let's see, 1 drive cycle mil on, and when I unplugged it, I started the car and the light was on the second I started it. So if the intake air temp sensor output voltage is 4.9 volts or more for at least 2 seconds, the code comes on. The light comes on and it sets a code. So this one has those kinds of descriptions. If I go back and go into this one, it tells us how to test it. Now, as a new mechanic, you have to follow these unless you understand the circuit. So this is going to walk you through a diagnosis. You don't have to know anything. The thing that you do have to know is to follow this 100% perfectly. If you skip steps, if you kind of guess on stuff, you're going to get the wrong results. You have to follow this exactly as they write it. So turn the ignition switch on. My ignition switch is on. Check the intake air temp with the scan tool or HDS. That's the Honda scan tool. Is it -4 degrees or less, or 5 volts indicated? So this, I don't read voltage, I'm only reading temperature, so let's check. And it's the last one on there. Intake air temp is -40. So is it -4 or less? Yes. Go to step 3. So don't go to, well, you were already on step 2. So don't go anywhere else. You have to go to step 3. So turn ignition switch off. Disconnect the intake air sensor 2-pin connector. Connect intake air temp sensor 2-pin connector terminals number 1 and number 2 with a jumper wire. So it's saying to jumper across sensor 1 and 2, or pin 1 and 2. So it's showing jumper across 1 and 2. And then turn the switch on. So I made a little jumper wire. It's just a piece of wire. So let's go jumper that. Need to grab my flashlight. Well, that's okay. So this is the connector, and I'm going to jumper it real quick. So now I have the wire going from one pin to the other pin. It's really important that you don't use a wire that's too big. You don't want to spread those terminals. You don't want to affect the terminals. You just want to touch the metal in there. So now that's jumpered. Okay, turn the ignition switch on. Check the intake air temp with the scan tool or HDS. So since I had the key off, kind of got to start over on this. Oop, intake air temp, 419 degrees Fahrenheit. Check the IAT. Is it -4 or less? No. No. Replace intake air temp sensor. So that is how you follow a diagnostic chart. You have to trust the chart and you have to follow every step. You can't skip steps. If you don't understand what a step is, you got to slow down and read it again, ask somebody else. And then once you're working on cars for a long time and you understand the circuit, then you can do your own diagnosis. So let me talk about that for a second. So with this sheet, you can figure out your own diagnosis. And basically what we did, well, I guess you need to understand how these sensors work. This is a variable resistor, so when the resistance changes here, we see a different voltage here. So when it was unplugged, and that's acting as though it's an open sensor. So that's acting as if the sensor is bad. So when I unplugged it, it makes it look like the sensor is bad. So unplugged, we have 5 volts going out, and we have an open, which there's always voltage all the way up to the open, which means that this is going to read 5 volts. When the test had us use a jumper wire here, that changes from unlimited resistance to no resistance, and then the voltage is dropped across that resistor and it goes to 0 volts. So, and if I was doing this without a trouble chart, I would have checked for 5 volts here, and I would have checked for a good ground here, and then I would have checked, I probably would have done the jumper wire trick. But I may have just said, oh, I have 5 volts here, I have ground here, sensor's bad, and I might have checked the resistance of the sensor as well. So that's, once you've been working on cars for a while, you don't need the diagnostic chart as much, but the diagnostic chart is super helpful when you don't know what to do. So when you work in a shop and you get a code that you've never seen before, and when you're new, you haven't seen any of them, follow the diagnostic chart and it will get you to the answer. All right. That's the end of this video. Have a good day.